3 days after my mother signed my name on a letter that could have changed my entire future. She invited me over for Sunday dinner and expected me to thank her. At first, I thought the worst thing my parents had ever done was enter my house without asking. I was wrong, because by the time I discovered what they had really taken from me, I was only 48 hours away from losing the biggest opportunity of my life. And the strange part? They truly believed that they had done nothing wrong. My name is Tori. I'm 33 years old, and I work in real estate. My entire career revolves around contracts, signatures, ownership, and trust. Every single day, I help people protect what legally belongs to them. Ironically, I almost lost control over my own life because I handed someone a spare key. It all started with something so small that most people would probably ignore it. I came home after an exhausting 11-hour workday, expecting nothing more than a hot shower and a quiet evening. Instead, I stepped inside and immediately froze. My spice jars were lined up perfectly in alphabetical order. Paprika beside parsley, cumin beside cinnamon. I stared at them for several seconds. I never organized spices. Honestly, I barely cook enough to care. Then I noticed another detail. The kitchen smelled strongly of lemon floor cleaner. Not just any cleaner, a brand I had never purchased. My stomach tightened. On the counter sat a perfectly stacked pile of mail. Too perfect. Someone had touched it. One envelope near the bottom had been opened and carefully sealed shut again. Its flap curled upward slightly, almost like it was trying to tell me a secret. I stood there wearing my coat, my purse still hanging from my shoulder, and suddenly I understood something that made my chest feel heavy. Someone had been inside my home. Someone had walked through my kitchen, opened my mail, moved my belongings, and left without saying a word. The problem was, only 2 people besides me had a key, my parents, and I was the one who had given it to them. At that moment, I still believed the biggest violation was reading my mail. I had absolutely no idea that a locksmith would soon be standing outside my front door because of a single envelope. But before I tell you about the locksmith, you need to understand how the key ended up in their hands. Because sometimes people don't steal access. Sometimes we give it to them ourselves. 2 years earlier, a pipe burst beneath my kitchen sink while I was 4 hours away closing an important deal. Water flooded half the floor. I panicked. My father rushed over. He shut off the valve. My mother cleaned the water and saved my hardwood floors from serious damage. That evening, feeling grateful and emotional, I handed my father a spare key. Only for emergencies, I said with a smile. He rotated the key between his fingers and nodded. That's how family should be, he replied. Back then, I assumed he meant helping each other. Looking back, I think he meant permanent access. For several months, nothing unusual happened. Then little things started appearing. A casserole inside my refrigerator, fresh flowers in a vase, clean towels folded differently. Winter jackets moved into another closet. Coffee mugs changing shelves. At first, I convinced myself it was love. Maybe they were bored. Maybe retirement was lonely. Maybe my mother simply missed taking care of someone. But eventually I realized something disturbing. None of these actions were illegal, yet every single one carried the same message. Someone else believed they had authority over my home. And if a stranger had done these things, I would have called the police. I finally gathered enough courage to call my mother. I kept my voice soft. Mom, I appreciate everything you do, but could you maybe call before coming over? There was a pause. Then she laughed gently. Honey, I was only helping. Helping. Such a harmless word. At least that's what I thought then. I didn't know that one day helping would almost cost me my dream job. And when that happened, my family wouldn't apologize. They would vote on my future instead. By spring, a strange routine had quietly formed. I would leave the house with the thermostat set to 68 degrees. I would come back and find it set at 71. My pantry shelves looked different. Kitchen drawers were rearranged. Even my bathroom cabinet seemed organized according to someone else's logic. Nothing was ever missing. Nothing was broken, but somehow everything felt slightly less mine. People always talk about toxic relationships. Nobody talks about what happens when love slowly ignores your boundaries, especially when the people doing it are your parents. When you're the responsible child in the family, everyone expects you to understand, to compromise, to stay quiet, to avoid conflict. Eventually, you forget that you're allowed to close your own door. And I had forgotten until work gave me a reason to remember. That year was huge for our company. We were preparing the biggest transaction our office had ever handled. For weeks, I barely slept. Coffee became breakfast. Takeout became dinner. My weekends disappeared, but I loved it because I had worked for everything I had. No shortcuts, no family connections, no favors. Just years of showing up before everyone else and leaving after everyone else. One afternoon, while refilling my coffee, my regional vice president, Renata, approached me. She leaned against the counter and smiled. We're opening a new branch in Tennessee. I looked up. Really? She nodded. We need a lead escrow manager. Then she lowered her voice. Your name is near the top of the list. For a second, I couldn't breathe. A promotion, a better salary, a relocation package, a chance to build something from the ground up. It wasn't just another job. It was validation. Proof that every late night and every sacrificed holiday had actually meant something. I hated carnations. Everyone in my family knew that. Yet there they were. Fresh, perfectly arranged, as if someone was trying to decorate over a crime scene. The second thing I noticed was the smell. Vanilla candles. My mother always burned vanilla candles. I never did. Then I saw the note attached to my refrigerator with a magnet. Come by Sunday. The four of us need to talk. Don't be upset. We only did it because we love you. I stared at those words. People don't write, don't be upset over a casserole. People write, don't be upset when they've already made a decision for someone else. I dropped my suitcase near the couch and walked toward the kitchen counter. Slowly, methodically, the same way I inspect paperwork before a closing. Never assume. Verify. Every envelope was exactly where I had left it, except now I could see tiny details I had missed before. 3 envelopes had been opened. Their adhesive looked gray and uneven. Someone had carefully peeled them apart and pressed them closed again. And beneath them sat a large certified envelope, face down, opened with a knife. Not steamed open, not accidentally torn. Sliced, cleanly, confidently, as if the person opening it never questioned whether they had the right. My pulse started racing. I turned the envelope over. My name was printed clearly across the front. Inside was a formal letter from corporate headquarters. Congratulations. We are pleased to offer you the position of lead escrow manager for our Tennessee expansion. My eyes moved downward. Salary increase, relocation assistance, housing allowance, performance bonuses, everything I had spent years working toward, everything I had sacrificed birthdays, weekends, and vacations for. Then I noticed something else. Blue ink. A circle. Someone had drawn a thick blue ring around the response deadline. 14 days. Circled exactly the way my mother used to. Circle homework assignments when I was 9 years old. And attached to the front of the letter was a sticky note. In my mother's handwriting. We'll discuss this Sunday. No decisions until then. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My future. Reduced to a family discussion. Scheduled between dinner and dessert. I slowly lowered myself into a kitchen chair, holding the letter in my hands, trying to process what I was seeing. Then another terrible thought hit me. If she opened the letter, had she done anything else? The next morning, I called Human Resources. I introduced myself, verified my identity, and asked a simple question. Has anyone contacted your office regarding my relocation offer? There was silence. Then the coordinator spoke carefully. Actually, yes. My stomach dropped. A woman claiming to be a family representative called 2 days ago. She said you appreciated the offer but had decided not to relocate. I stopped breathing. The coordinator continued. She also asked if the position could be offered to another candidate. I felt heat rush into my face. Someone had spoken for me. Renata grinned. Watch your mail. I laughed. I will. Funny how life sometimes warns us before disaster arrives. We simply don't recognize the warning. 2 days later, my younger brother Greg called me. Mom says you hurt her feelings. I sighed. I asked her to call before coming over. Seriously? It's your house, he said. But they're mom and dad. As if being parents automatically erased property lines. As if blood gave people permanent permission. I rubbed my forehead. They don't live here, Greg. They're helping. That word again. Helping. Everyone around me kept using it. Helping. Tidying. Caring. Protecting. Different words. Same meaning. No one cared whether I wanted any of it. The conversation ended with Greg saying something that stayed with me for days. Sometimes peace is worth more than being right. Maybe. But peace built on silence isn't peace. It's surrender. A week later, I was packing for a 2-day business trip to Illinois. Before leaving, I noticed something strange again. My stack of mail looked too neat. Almost staged. One envelope sat at a slightly different angle. It felt ridiculous. Paranoid even. Yet something inside me whispered that I wasn't imagining things anymore. So I pulled out my phone. I took a picture, added a timestamp, and quietly spoke to my empty kitchen. Saturday, I said. I'm getting that key back on Saturday. I even typed a message to my father. Dad, I think it's time I have my spare key back. But I never sent it. My alarm reminded me that my flight was at 5 a.m. I closed the draft, locked my suitcase, grabbed my laptop, and walked out. I spent hours protecting million-dollar transactions from strangers, while the front door to my own home remained open to the 2 people I trusted most. The deal in Illinois nearly collapsed twice. I managed to save it both times. Then, during the second afternoon, my phone buzzed. Voicemail. Mom. Her voice sounded unusually cheerful. Hi, sweetheart. Something arrived for you. Certified mail. I signed for it. We'll talk when you get home. She sounded proud, almost excited, but my heart sank immediately. Certified mail isn't casual. Certified mail means deadlines, contracts, official documents, things that matter. And suddenly Renata's words echoed inside my head. Watch your mail. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely afraid to go home. Because deep down, I already knew. Whatever was waiting for me there, it wasn't going to be good. I barely remembered the drive home, only that my hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than usual, and that my mother's cheerful voicemail kept replaying inside my head. Certified mail arrived. I signed for it. We'll talk when you get home. Those words didn't sound comforting anymore. They sounded rehearsed. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I already knew something was wrong. The first thing I noticed was the flowers. Bright red carnations sat in a vase near the window. Someone had nearly handed away the biggest opportunity of my career, without my permission, without even asking me. And deep down, I already knew exactly who had made that call. But what hurt the most wasn't losing trust. It was realizing that my own mother truly believed she was protecting me. She wasn't trying to destroy my future. She genuinely thought she had the authority to decide it. And somehow, that hurt even more. I sat there in complete silence, holding the letter, staring at the blue circle around my deadline, wondering how the people who raised me could love me so much and still refuse to see me as an adult. At that moment, I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was heartbroken. Because I finally understood something I had spent years refusing to admit. My parents didn't see boundaries as protection. They saw them as rejection. And on Sunday, They were expecting me to apologize. They had absolutely no idea that by Saturday morning, their key wouldn't fit my front door anymore. The rest of that evening passed in complete silence, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I finally understood something painful. For years, I had been trying to convince people to respect boundaries they never believed existed. And suddenly, I was tired. The next morning, I brought the envelope to work. I couldn't focus, couldn't answer emails, couldn't even finish my coffee. My coworker Dana noticed immediately. She sat down across from me. "You look like you haven't slept." I slid the envelope toward her. The certified letter, the opened mail, the phone call, the spare key, everything. I told her everything, from the casseroles, to the moved towels, to the flowers, to the circle deadline, to my mother pretending to be my representative. Dana stopped stirring her coffee. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she leaned back. "Tori, do you realize how serious this is?" I shrugged weakly. "They're my parents." "No." She interrupted gently. "They're people who opened mail that didn't belong to them. They signed your name. They contacted your employer. And they attempted to interfere with your career." She paused. "That isn't helping. That's control." I hated hearing that word. Control. Because if Dana was right, then I'd spent 2 years making excuses for behavior I would never tolerate from anyone else. Dana continued. "Opening certified mail addressed to someone else can be a federal offense. Impersonating someone to influence employment decisions creates even more problems. You have evidence, the envelope, the note, the phone records, the HR statement. You could report this." For one strange minute, I almost enjoyed hearing it, not because I wanted revenge, but because someone else finally saw what I had been experiencing. For years, I had been called dramatic, ungrateful, overly sensitive, difficult, and now the law itself was essentially saying, no, this was wrong. I called my mother before Sunday. I didn't want Greg sitting there acting like a referee while everyone explained why I was selfish. She answered cheerfully. "Hi, sweetheart." I skipped the small talk. "Why did you call my company?" Silence. Then she sighed. "I was protecting you. You would have moved 6 hours away. You would have been alone. We were trying to save this family." There it was again. Helping. Protecting. Saving. Every violation wrapped in a beautiful word. Then my father took the phone. Calm. Confident. Completely certain he was right. "We're your parents. We'll always have access to our daughter." As if parenthood came with lifetime ownership papers. As if growing up required permission. As if I was still 12 years old. After hanging up, I downloaded the complaint forms, filled in every blank, printed every page, placed the documents on my kitchen table, beside the opened envelope, beside my mother's sticky note, beside the blue circle around my future. For hours, I just stared at them. One decision. That was all it would take. One signature, and investigators would begin asking questions. Greg called the next morning. Apparently, information traveled faster than apologies in my family. Mom's crying. Dad's furious. They're 63 years old. Dad has heart problems. You'd really involve federal investigators over one letter? One letter. I almost laughed. Because it was never about one letter. It was about every unlocked door, every ignored request, every excuse, every time someone else decided what was best for me. And every time I convinced myself that love meant accepting it. Greg never once said they were wrong. Not once. The entire conversation focused on what would happen to them. No one asked what had already happened to me. After hanging up, I called Dana again. She listened quietly. Then she asked a question that changed everything. "If you file the complaint, what changes for you next Tuesday?" I didn't answer, because I honestly didn't know. She spoke softly. "You don't want revenge. You want your future back. You want your home back. You want peace." And peace isn't always found in punishment. For a long time, I sat alone in my kitchen, looking at the papers, thinking, breathing, remembering every argument, every excuse, every apology that never came. Then finally, I picked up the complaint, folded it once, then twice, then tore it in half, and then in half again. Not because they deserved forgiveness, not because I was afraid, and certainly not because they were innocent. I destroyed it because filing charges would keep me trapped in the same fight, and I was done fighting. I wasn't interested in punishing my parents. I was interested in becoming free. So instead, I decided to do two very simple things. First, I was going to take back my career. And second, I was going to take back my house, even if that meant changing a lock that had protected strangers for years, but no longer protected me. The first thing I did was call Renata, not HR, not email, not some automated portal. I called her directly. She answered on the second ring. Tori. I took a slow breath. I need to explain something. Then I told her everything. Not the emotional version, not the family drama. Just facts. Someone had entered my home without permission. Someone had opened my certified mail. Someone had contacted the company pretending to speak for me. Someone had informed your office that I intended to decline the offer, and none of it was authorized. There was silence. Then Renata sighed. I'm glad you called, but I won't lie to you. The call caused damage. My stomach tightened. A second candidate has already been discussed. We haven't finalized anything yet, but we need reassurance. You now have until Friday, 3 days earlier than my original deadline. 3 days to repair doubt that I never created. 3 days to prove I actually wanted the opportunity I had spent years earning. I didn't panic. Panic solves nothing. Instead, I treated it like every difficult closing I had ever handled. Step by step, fact by fact. I called the regional director, answered every question, confirmed my commitment, explained the interference, provided documentation, and by Thursday afternoon, the position was officially mine again. Not gifted, not rescued, recovered, earned twice. The moment I signed the acceptance paperwork, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Relief, because for the first time, someone else's opinion no longer controlled my future. Then I made another phone call, a locksmith. Saturday, 9 o'clock sharp, both locks. No explanation needed. No drama, just a service appointment. Saturday morning arrived bright and quiet. A man named Ricky pulled into my driveway exactly on time. Within 20 minutes, the old cylinders were gone. Fresh locks clicked into place. New keys rested in my hand. Simple pieces of metal. Yet somehow they felt heavier. More important, because these keys represented something far bigger than a front door. They represented permission. And permission belonged to me again. After Ricky left, I opened my desk drawer, took out a plain white envelope, placed the old spare key inside. Nothing else. No note. No explanation. No speech. People argue with speeches. People defend themselves against speeches. Silence leaves nothing to debate. I sealed the envelope, addressed it to my parents, and mailed it. Then I waited. Sunday morning, 10 o'clock. Exactly as expected. I heard footsteps approaching the porch. Then I heard it. Metal scraping against metal. My father's key sliding into the lock. Turning, stopping, trying again, scraping harder, jiggling, then stopping completely. The sound lasted only a few seconds, but after 2 years, it sounded like freedom. Then came the knocking. Sharp, fast, demanding. Tori, open this door. I walked toward the window first. My father stood there holding the useless key between his fingers. Confused, angry, almost offended. Behind him stood my mother, clutching the white envelope against her chest. She had already opened it. She already knew what the missing note meant. I opened the door, but I stayed exactly where I was, on my side of the threshold. I didn't step back. I didn't invite them in. My father exploded immediately. What did you do to the lock? I changed it. His face reddened. You changed the locks on your own parents? We have a right to be here. We'll always have access to our daughter. I kept my voice calm, steady. You had access because I trusted you. I gave you that key for emergencies. You used it to enter my house, read private mail, open a certified letter, call my employer, and answer as if you were me. That wasn't love. That was a choice. He opened his mouth, then closed it. For the first time in my entire life, my father had no response. I looked at my mother. My voice softened. I know you believed you were helping. I know you were afraid. But being afraid doesn't give anyone permission to decide another person's future. Tears gathered in her eyes. I continued. A key isn't a right. It's trust. And trust can be taken back. Silence. Complete silence. Then I said the words I had practiced all week. When you're ready to knock instead of unlock, call me. I'll answer. I love you, but you don't get a key to my life anymore. And then I gently closed the door. The new lock clicked shut. Softly, almost peacefully, Greg called less than an hour later. Angry, demanding, saying I embarrassed the family. I listened quietly, then answered. I didn't report them. I could have. I simply changed my locks. That's something every homeowner is allowed to do. For once, he had nothing left to say. The arguments continued for 2 weeks. Then they slowly disappeared. Storms eventually become quiet when they have nothing left to push against. That Friday, I officially accepted the Tennessee position. Before the deadline, my mother had circled in blue. A month later, a message appeared on my phone. From Mom. I'm sorry I opened your letter. I was scared of losing you. I understand now. I stared at the screen for several minutes, then typed back, thank you for saying that. I love you too. Come visit after I'm settled. Just knock first. Today, I still keep my keys in my pocket, not because I'm afraid someone will enter my house, but because they remind me of something important. Some people don't force their way into your life. They walk in using access you once gave them out of love. And sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for yourself is quietly change the lock and finally stop explaining why.